Hello, my name is Scott Davis, and welcome to New World Birth. This is the 2018 Rave New Year Neutrino Forecast. And on January 2nd, we have the sun. It's in Aquarius when it enters the 41st hexagram at 2:19 a.m. UT, which is 21:19 or 9:19 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on January 21st. At that time, we have the sun in the first line of the 41st hexagram. The earth is detrimented in the 31-1. The moon is in the 36-6. We've got the north node in the second line of the 7th hexagram with the south node in the second line of the 13th hexagram. Mercury is in the first line of the 54, and it's exalted due to Pluto being in the 54. Venus is detrimented in the fourth line of the 41. We've got Mars in the third line of the 14. Jupiter is in the second line of the 43. Saturn is detrimented in the sixth line of the 10th hexagram. Uranus is in the 42-5. Neptune is in the 63-2. And Pluto is in the 54-5. And the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching have corresponding codons in DNA. And the 41st is the only initiating codon that begins every string of genetic information. Every genetic sentence begins with the 41st codon, which is the gate of decrease, and it begins the stream of the human experiential way. We've got decrease here, the 41st gate, connected to the 30th gate, which is fate, and then to the 36th gate of crisis, and eventually to the 35th gate of expectations. And this is the stream of desire for experience. Entry of the sun in the 41st gate initiates a new human cycle on this plane. The 41st comes out of the root, which is a pressure center. So we have the pressure to start something. When the sun enters into the gate of decrease in the channel of desire, we have the Rave New Year. And this influences all forms of life at the beginning of a new solar cycle. Decrease is like the gardener who prunes the plants so that it can sprout anew. In past years, we've looked at the stages that lead up to the Rave New Year. And during the Gregorian New Year, we had the sun in the 38th gate with the opposition with the earth in the 39th gate of obstruction. Bringing us to question, do we fulfill our purpose and fulfill our spirit in the past year? This is the beginning of the closing down of the cycle that leads to the Rave New Year. Was there a purpose? And then the sun moves on to the 54th gate of ambition with the earth in the 53rd gate of beginnings, which brought us to look forward. Who are our correct allies to fulfill our ambition for transformation and new beginnings? Who can I work with? Who can I trust? Who can I rely on? And then it moved on to the 61st gate with the earth, 61st gate, inner truth, with the earth in the 62nd gate of details, which brought us to look within ourselves for inspiration, based on facts, based on what is possible. And then the sun finally moved on to the 60th gate of limitation, to just let go, close out the year, let go of the seduction of the mind, letting go of insecurities, driving us to believe that we need to make something happen, closing the book on the past to be ready to step forward into a new cycle, to get clean. This is about transcending limitations through acceptance. So let's take a look at this year's Rave chart, which again occurs at January 22nd at 2:19 a.m. UT. Here in the United States, that will be at January 21st at 9:19 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we have one channel definition due to the transit field during the Rave New Year. And as Ross said, when you have a definition, you have a life force. And with the Earth in the 31st gate and the North Node in the 7, This brings us the channel of the Alpha, which is a design of leadership for good or bad. Will be a year where folks are recognized as true leaders, but the more reluctant they are to assume this responsibility, the better leaders they become. Being a logical collective channel, this confers the ability to understand patterns and trends which can be projected in the future. This can also explain this information logically in a way others can understand. The most important aspect is that these leaders are attuned to the rhythms of the people that they are to lead. The defined G center could influence not self folks without to obsess about where they're headed, where they'll find love. And the defined throat center can influence those without to talk about being a leader or not being a leader to attract attention. And this is a collective channel, which means there's a need in one way or another for some kind of sharing. One thing that really interests me regarding leadership and the global cycles, which is related to the precession of the equinox, is that during 2016, the color of the 37 first line and the 40 first line changed from second color, hope, to first color, fear, as it moves towards the 55-6 and the 59-6 in 2027. And here in the United States, we saw that shift with the end of the Obama presidency, whose candidacy posters actually said hope with a visage of Obama, and the beginning of the candidacy and presidency of Donald Trump, which seems to be getting a lot of mileage from fear. But you can look all over the world in the news and in the not self interactions of people in communities, and the populace is really being driven more from fear than hope, which is the background color frequency until 2027. And when I look at the circuitry of this year's Rave New Year chart, the one thing that's interesting is the emphasis on collective energy. Now, aside from the sun and earth, which are always in collective gates during the Rave New Year, we have the moon, the nodes, Venus, Uranus, and Neptune in collective gates, 2 logic, 3 abstract. So the themes of sharing are going to be strong in the coming year. Excuse me, with folks trying to figure out what they share and who shares with them as collective sharing networks disintegrate. Here in the United States, this is stark reality, as obvious as governmental social service systems are being dismantled for the benefit of the very rich. Remember, fear is coloring the populace, not self-mind. Collective sharing will continue to diminish as part of the breakdown phase towards 2027. Individual energy is well represented with Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn activating individual gates of the 14, the 43, and the 10. And these individual activations represent the ability of individuals to empower others simply by being their authentic self. They're acoustic, so we are primarily influenced by the sound of what is authentic. The individual energy of the Rave New Year chart brings the potential to be empowered during the upcoming year by following your strategy and authority, but this also brings melancholy. There is one tribal gate activated in the Rave New Year chart, but it's activated by both Mercury and Pluto in the 54th gate of ambition. Given the environment of fear, not self tribes will use relationships secretly or in public to make sure they have the resources to share with their extended families when others may not. There will be folks who will do anything to get those needs met. I really feel that the color of fear has darkened the environment and that people seem to be more on edge, more in survival mode, especially if they have family members depending on them. And Ross said in his final Rave New Year presentation in January 2011, we're moving through a greater cycle. We are near the close of it. 2027 will bring a new cycle. It will bring a cycle where the background frequency is going to insist that we have our own authority to guide us because there will not be an infrastructure to support us. So let's break down the details of this year's Rave New Year chart. We always start with the sun in the 41-1 down here, which is brings the imagination to make the very best out of very little. And with the sun in the 41st gate, of contraction, decrease the limitation of resources, which maximizes the development of potential. The sun is in the first line of the 41, which is reasonableness, the appropriate delegation of responsibility, exalted imagination to make the best out of very little, coolness, where the energy to release feelings is selective, detrimented, a tendency in understanding to assume capability, leading to strain. The hothead, the urge to release feelings. And then we have the earth, and it's in the 31st hexagram, and the gate of leadership, influence, the law of friction, whether active or passive, that engenders transference and thus influence, and it's always detrimented in the Rave New Year chart in the 31-1 as manifestation. Influence cannot exist in a vacuum. Detrimented, the absorption of light, the darkness that can only promise manifestation, the unnatural expression of leadership. And the sun earth are always in the same on the Rave New Year. So I read this chart like I would a solar return chart with only personality activations, which means the interpretation is like being a reverse soothsayer, where following your strategy and authority gives you a way to navigate these possibilities. But the majority of people living on this planet, living not self lives, they have no choice about to be conditioned by these energies and potentially make decisions based on that conditioning. And we've got Venus conjunct the sun. Um, Venus is in the 41-4, where it's detrimented. Um, and the line is correction, successful adaptation to limitation, detriment, the expenditure of energy on maintaining relationships rather than on correction. In times of decrease, weak associations are shunned as costly, no matter how attractive. The energy which fuels holding on to feelings rather than adapt. And we're going to see those that are able to adapt and those that won't. And adaptability will be valued with Venus in the line of correction. And of course, the Sun and Venus bring pressure for new emotional beginnings to be shared with the collective. Also adding to the Rave New Year pressure are Mercury and Pluto in the 54th gate and hexagram. This is ambition, the Marian maiden, interaction in its mundane social context, but with one's mystical and cosmic relationships. And Mercury is in the first line of the 54, and exalted there again because of Pluto. And this is the line of influence, exalted, the ability to achieve through secret relationships, anywhere from the private advisor to the saintness, ambition energized through secret relationships which fuel influence. In the realm of communication and personal subjective truth, this is the pressure to achieve resources for the tribe through communicating truth through secret and perhaps covert means. And Pluto is in the 54-5, magnanimity, exalted, the natural authority and actualizing spirit that in a position of power can have genuine and fulfilling relationships with less advantage as long as they are in service and make no demands. The energy for actualizing despite this power fuels fruitful relationships with others, no polarity. The 54 is looking to find forces that are correct for you, your allies, who is there to help your ambition, who are the forces that you respect and that you can learn from. Only when you use your strategy and authority to align yourself to the people in your life, only when you use your strategy and authority can you align yourself to the people in life who are correct for you. And then in the human experiential way, like I said, from the 41 through the 30 to the 36, uh, um, we have the sun and Venus in the 41, and then we have the moon in the abstract collective gate of crisis. The moon is a reflective light to carry out the message of the sun, to embody the sun's message, not as input, as direction, as force, as drive, inner nature brought into the surface and put on display, guiding us to the material acceptance of life. Where is the moon pulling humanity to stand up and be on display? It's in the 36th hexagram of crisis, the darkening of the light. The rule of cycles in which decline is a natural but not enduring stage. The 36 is a fear gate, which brings the fear of inadequacy, of not having what is needed for the experience. And the moon occupies the sixth line of justice, the inevitable survival of right, exalted the knowledge and attendant faith that the powers of darkness eventually destroy themselves. Those whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make mad. The correctness of crisis when it arises out of pure feelings, detrimented a profound sorrow and cynicism that is not diminished by the understanding that darkness is self-annihilating. The sorrow and cynicism that comes from seeing that despite correctness of feelings, there is always crisis. We will see the powers of darkness. Emotion will arise out of friction. This year's movie will be suspenseful. There may be very little we can do to change the madness of the world, but you can take care of ourselves and those we love. Adding to the pressure, we have Neptune bringing doubt as mental pressure. Neptune brings the veil. It doesn't let us see what's behind things, see what's behind the things, what they're all about. So the majority of people are blind to the fact that collective sharing that's been in place for hundreds of years is breaking down, not due to this political party or that, because we're coming to the end of a major cycle. Neptune is in the 63rd gate of doubt. After completion, in the spiral of life, all endings are beginnings. And it is in the second line of the 63, which is structuring, exalted the establishment of a large framework through which achievement can be expanded and shared, compensating others for their contributions while maintaining control of direction. The pressure, the pressure to share one's doubts with others while still maintaining control. Detrimented instability in achievement that, when in positions of authority, lead to arrogance and the desire to keep others away from the center of power. Doubts in achievement that can lead to suspicion of others. And there will be doubt, and with Neptune, there is confusion in thinking. So stop letting your mind run the show. Find your way in the world by following your strategy and authority. And Mars is in the undefined sacral motor over here, in the third line of the 14th hexagram, bringing us the immature energy to the not self world in the gate of power skills, possession in great measure, the accumulation and retention of power through skilled interaction, coupling grace with control. And it's in the third line of service, the utilization of talent and wealth for the highest good, exalted Selfless contribution to society. The key to power lies in selfless contribution to others, detrimenting greed and self-destruction of moral fiber. The power of selfishness to fuel greed, fueled by the color of fear, not knowing when enough is enough. Mars brings outbreaks and unexpected protests will become more likely to disintegrate into disorganization, being more chaotic and potentially aggressive as wealth inequality, racism, misogyny, and the elite power grab becomes even more transparent in the upcoming year. The sacral is the life force of the world, but you can be okay by being in the flow by acting as yourself. And I'm going to add a little astrology to this, taboo to the human design purists, I know, but I'm a heretic. And Uranus changes signs, moving into Taurus on May 15th after spending 7 years in Aries. And I remember the day Uranus, the planet of upheaval, entered Aries as being the day of the Fukushima nuclear disaster on March 11th, 2011. And then Ra Urahu passed the following day. Anyway, the planet of unexpected change enters the sign of Taurus, which represents money, possessions, security, and material goods. And from an astrological perspective, this could be a time of rapid, unexpected economic destabilization, perhaps a crash of a seemingly stable financial markets. The house of cards collapses. The emperor never was wearing clothes. The only thing that keeps financial systems afloat is that people believe in him, even if it's just smoke and mirrors. Ironically, Uranus retrogrades back into Aries on November 6th, which coincidentally is the date of the United States midterm elections. The beginning of Taurus is also the third hexagram, ordering, difficulty at the beginning. The fundamental change of initiation is to transcend confusion and establish order. And Taurus begins right at the end of the fourth line, charisma. So its first full line in the first full line in Taurus is the fifth line of victimization. And for those who have gotten readings from me where I use human design to talk about the character in their story, and astrological transits to discuss the current and near future scenes in their play, as you recall, I always say no matter what the current act, whether the current act is a comedy or a tragedy, your lines are always to follow your strategy and authority. As Ross said in the previous Rave New Year reports, when you live the cycle as yourself, it doesn't matter what's going on in the cycle. Also, in the undefined sacral center, we have Uranus in the 42nd gate of growth, increase, the expansion of resource, which maximizes the development of full potential. And it's in the fifth line of self-actualization. Exalted, the fulfillment of actualization of purpose as a natural path whose reward is a healthy sense of self rather than the power and influence that naturally follow. Growth that is self-fulfilling and naturally leads to influence. Detrimented self-actualization as a strictly inner experience that may demand or result in reclusive nature, inner growth that empowers reclusiveness. So the evolutionary mutative undercurrent for this Rave New Year is shining on self-actualization. And both the splenic center and the heart center are completely open with no activations, meaning that well-being and worth will be elusive during the upcoming year as people hold on to what's not good for them and or try to prove themselves. The G center is defined with three gates activated. We've got the north node in the 7th gate, the south node in the 13th gate, and we have Saturn in the 10th gate. Um, and the nodes are openings for neutrino energy from outside of our solar system and represent our environment. And I think of it as a background frequency that over the course of the year slowly changes from the 13 in the second line, the south node, to the 7 in the second line, north node. So it moves from a collective abstract gate, the listener, the fellowship of man, universal ideas and values in an ordered framework which inspires humanistic cooperation, to a collective logic gate, the role of the self, the army, the point of convergence by design, the need of leadership to guide and order society. But particularly interesting to me is that the second lines of both of these hexagrams. So we start the year with more of emphasis on the second line of the 13th hexagram, which is bigotry, the risk always present that fellowship can only exist for a particular type, whether racial, uh, religious, national, or intellectual, exalted tolerance as the least offensive manifestation of bigotry, a role of openness through tolerance, detrimented the obsessive belief that the highest ideals cannot be embraced by the lowest of forms, an extremely difficult position where even the highest ideas uh, prove the rationalization of highest ideas provide the rationalization of hatred, a role of openness so narrow that it's practically no one is worth listening to. And then moving on its trajectory to the 17 to the 7 2, which is the Democrat, the ability to lead by serving the will of the majority, exalted the application of universally accepted systems when connected through the alpha channel to gate 31, influence the potential for widespread and revolutionary effect on society, the capacity of the self to lead when chosen, detrimented elitism and denigration by Democrats of democracy, the capacity of the self once chosen to feel superior to those that chose them. And racism and bigotry are certainly important topics of the not self scenery currently. Movements towards serving the will of the majority would be welcome indeed. And of course, the 7 is connected to the 31, where the Earth resides. So the upcoming year will have the potential for widespread and revolutionary effect on society as we move into the future. And this is the 41-1. This is the quarter of mutations, variation of the cross of the unexpected, which the 41 brings new experiences as a theme, fantasy, to unexpectedly see an advantage in a new adventure to be shared with others. And it's rooted in the 31, which challenges the king, the tribal leader. This is leaders who are elected by the collective, which can bring unexpected leaders that come out of nowhere, claim power, and have influence, suddenly given authority due to unexpected events, due to unexpected experiences. And Saturn is also in this defined G center in the 10th gate, the behavior of the self, treading the underlying code of behavior which ensures successful interaction despite circumstances. And Saturn is detrimented in the 10-6, the role model, the perfect expression of norms through action rather than words, detrimented, the hypocrite. Do as I say, not as I do. Behavior restricted to words rather than actions. Saturn brings consequences, in this case, to the hypocrite who plays the role model, but also to those under the influence of the hypocrite. And then finally, we have Jupiter in the 43rd gate. Uh, Insight, breakthrough. In order for achievement to be maintained, a new order must be fairly established. It's in the in the second line of the 43rd hexagram. Dedication, exalted, the maintenance of specialized attitudes which promote breakthrough, unique mental habits and thought processes which promote insight. Detriment, a dedication to action that, when actualization is in sight, may be incautious. The urge for expression that will abandon its normal process when opportunity arises. Dedication to honoring your own law, living as yourself, follow your strategy, honor your authority, and love yourself. We cannot change the ignorance of the not self world, but we can make a difference in our own lives. No matter what is happening in the world, good, bad, indifferent, take care of yourself, take care of those that you love. You can find your way by navigating as yourself. This is not about being homogenized by the Rave New Year. The weather doesn't have to negatively impact you. As Ross said, that's the beauty of understanding how to operate as yourself, is that you're out of the program. And of course, we're moving towards 2027 and the end of the cross of the planning. As the background frequency is going to insist that we have our own authority to guide us, because we will not have the infrastructure to support us. We're all seeing this basic support structures that have been in place through governments and institutions continue to dwindle. As Ross said in the past, never mind this year, it's not going to track any better over the years building up to 2027, because we have the slow breakdown of the 4037 community infrastructure. It's not about waiting for a New Year's forecast that's going to be full of light and brightness, because that's not what's happening. You have to see that the counterpoint is the dissolving of the infrastructure is the empowering of the individual. This is the only counterpoint. What is your strategy? What your strategy and authority offers you is the empowerment of you as an individual to align with yourself to the frequency that you truly are. Best wishes on this Rave New Year. May you live it as yourself. Thank you for checking out New World Birth. You can check us out on Facebook, Blogger, and YouTube. And I encourage you to share this information as videos or as text, as widely as you choose. And I invite you to contact me at newworldbirth@yahoo.com if you have some questions or you wish to schedule a reading. And I am still providing readings. So if you've been thinking about getting a reading from me, please contact me. I would love to provide you a reading during these uncertain times. You'll need to be able to either call me in Maine in the USA, or we can connect with Skype to receive your reading. As always, I'm blessed that you've taken the time to connect with my passion for the synthesis of ancient mysteries and their application to our journey in this incarnation. The light in me honors the light in you. And as Ra would say, love yourself. Anyway, Happy New Year. All my best to everybody.